while we're there.
Testing, 1, 2. Testing, 1, 2.
I think, Mr. Peterson, we're now to a review of 6.1.8.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Murphy, questions, please, sir?
Yes, sir. Just, if you will, just give an overview of, or an explanation as to what that particular line item is about.
Okay. This is in preparation of the construction of the
Do I
West
need to call
Walnut.
the meeting back to order?
Yes, sir.
Technically, we are reconvening the meeting after a recess, and now Mr. Peterson is addressing Mr. Murphy.
All right. This is in preparation of the West Walnut Street project. The reconstruction of West Walnut Street will include the reconstruction, and in some cases repositioning of all the utilities, which includes broadband and electrical distribution. So the agreement before you this evening, in general terms, lays out the relationship between Bright Ridge, the city, and the contractor that will do the work. The construction contract between the city and the contractor doing the work will require that that contractor dig the ditches, install the duct bank, and after inspection, cover those ditches and duct banks up. That will provide conduit for street lighting as well as electrical distribution. Bright Ridge will then come in afterwards and pull the conductor through the conduits, make all the terminations, set the transformers, set the street lights, and all of those activities. And in summary, that is what this agreement between Bright Ridge and the city of Johnson City provides for. Subsequent to that work, the city and the property owner will have to work in concert with Bright Ridge to get the electrical conductor from the property line over to the building. That is all done on private property, but when we transition from overhead distribution to underground distribution, it's going to require a new point of entry into the majority of those buildings, and it's also going to require the replacement of the overhead line with an underground line. But this takes care of everything that will happen in the public right-of-way and will be part of the cost of the overall project.
Will the overall cost of the project also take care of running that service line to the premise?
The overall cost of the entire project will include the cost to run from the property line to the building. Yes, ma'am. It will be in addition to this
Yeah, that's what I figured.
contract. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions on that item? Are you ready to take action on the consent agenda?
Move for approval.
We have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. If there's not objection, Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Brock,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fowler,
Yes.
Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Next order of business is consideration of ordinance number 4769-21.
Mr. Peterson, before we
Yes,
go to
sir.
that, can we add one thing to our, to the consent agenda
Well, it'd be to our regular agenda.
or to the regular agenda?
Certainly.
The AstroTurf for Science Hills football field. Can we put that in as
Under other?
under other, maybe?
So the motion is to add under other business, consideration of the replacement of the artificial playing surface at Science Hill High School football stadium.
That is exactly what I said.
And I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. At this point, we're voting on just adjusting the agenda or adding it to the agenda. Ms. Jennings, are you ready to call the roll?
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fowler?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes.
We will add that to the end of other business. Anything else? Any other adjustments?
No, sir.
Okay, next order of business is consideration of ordinance 4769-21. An ordinance to amend the zoning map of the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, being part of the appendix to ordinance number 1519, entitled an ordinance to adopt a code of laws and ordinances for the city of Johnson City, Tennessee, and to repeal all laws and ordinances in conflict therewith and amendatory thereof by changing from R3 medium-density residential zoning to B4 planned arterial business zoning. Property located at 115 Swanee Drive is ready for your consideration on second reading and public hearing.
Good evening. It's good to see you all in person.
Yes.
There have been no changes since the first reading, but since it is the public input, I would like to go over just a few things in the interest of. Where this is located is on the northwest corner of Swanee Drive and Sunrise. I believe, yes, right behind Cootie Brown's. So it's right off of Roan Street. It has been used as a parking lot for about 30 years. And so, just to kind of show you what it looks like today, what they would like to do as a non-conforming space is to rezone it in order so that the use matches the zoning. And B4 would allow that. This is a site plan that is needed. It's basically just saying it's going to stay as a parking lot. And the future land use map also supports this as a commercial enterprise. Staff recommends approval. We don't really have a policy that says that recommends it, but it doesn't conflict with any policies or the strategic plan. And Planning Commission recommended approval. So that is all I have for presentation, but if you have any questions or if the applicant would like to speak, sorry, I've gotten out of order, but
We're fine.
questions for staff.
Are there any questions for staff? No. All right, thank you. Would the applicant care to address us, or has that been sufficiently?
I think you discussed it fine, but I can give you feedback.
Okay, thank you.
Open.
We're gonna, we're to have a public hearing on this, and so at this moment, if I had a gavel, I would use it to open the public hearing, which would be to invite anyone wishing to address for or against this ordinance, the opportunity to do so. I'm assuming, Preston, you're not looking to, so we'll close the public hearing.
Move for
And
approval.
we have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second. Is there discussion, or can we call the roll? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fowler?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Next order of business is consideration of ordinance 4766-21, an ordinance to amend the fiscal year 2021 budget, which was passed by ordinance number 4745-20. This is the same budget amendment that has been before you for the previous two readings without change. We would recommend your approval.
I make a motion to move to approve.
We have a motion.
Second?
And a second. And I have a gavel. It was in the drawer.
You're official now.
Call the roll.
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fowler?
Yes.
Mayor Wise?
Yes.
Next order of business is consideration of a memorandum of agreement with the Johnson City Conventions and Visitors Bureau. Mr. Wilson?
For the past 20, 25 plus years, the city and the CVB have had a unwritten mutual agreement on funding. What this does is it formalizes that agreement. Essentially, the agreement is to share half of the hotel motel tax. Now, the hotel motel tax is 7%, so we're only sharing 5%. The 2% is allocated and is currently used for the debt service for the ETSU Performing Arts Center. We also exclude the hotel motel tax from the Carnegie. We keep that. So it formalizes that. We ask them to use these funds exclusively to help promote Johnson City. They can't loan any money out to any other organizations. They have to provide quarterly reports and annual audit, and either party can cancel if they so desire with 120 days notice. That's it. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to expound or answer other questions.
It also includes 2 members from the city
Well,
commission.
that's included in the bylaws,
Right.
but yes,
Just-
yeah, that's addressed in the bylaws.
Are there other questions for Mr. Wilson?
Thank you.
Move for approval?
We have a motion for approval. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second. If there's no objection, Ms. Jennings, would you read the roll on the MOU?
Commissioner Brock,
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter,
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fowler,
Yes.
and Mayor Wise.
Yes.
Your next order of business is to hear a presentation on a remote worker initiative that the Northeast Tennessee Tourism Association, NetRep, and Visit Johnson City have put together. This is in direct response to your strategic planning process where the quasi-governmentals were invited in to participate to ensure some coordination amongst efforts within the community to promote Johnson City. And in one of your strategic goals was to encourage and incentivize remote workers to relocate from their present location to Johnson City. So these 3 groups have come together to put a proposal together, and they're here this evening to make that proposal.
I really appreciate you doing that presentation for us. In consideration of that, and we'll go ahead and go grab a seat and make you you did a good job. That's what I was trying to say. And I hope it's okay. I'm going to take my mask off. I want to thank the commission for the opportunity to be here tonight. I really am excited to collaborate with the individuals that are going to be speaking here from NETA and Visit Johnson City and NetRep. And this has been an effort that honestly dates back before COVID, I guess, when this commission really pushed, not only staff here with NetRep and NETA, CVB, Chamber, JCDA, but also Pete and his team as well. And it's unfortunate we had COVID in the middle, but it's been a really exciting opportunity that I think will bring a lot of opportunity here to this community. So as Pete mentioned, this dates back, I guess, right before COVID when we all got together for a strategic planning session. But probably what really sparked the conversation with the individuals that you see here tonight stems back on January 28th. And that's where the commission had asked us to get back together to go through the strategic plan that was placed in front of everyone that we all had kind of a part of helping create. And I think at that meeting, probably what stuck out to me the most, and Joe, I know I probably have said this to you several times, but Mayor, you really made it a priority to talk about collaboration and also, importantly, too, to talk about the future of the city and how you were going to look at funding projects. And you said we're doing a lot of really good things, but you want to see things done more collaboratively and better. And ultimately, that led to us kind of putting our heads together and coming here tonight to speak to each of you. So specifically, as we look at the strategic plan, I want to point out the economic vitality section that was outlined. And the second bullet point was a piece that really stood out to me and others as we started talking and having conversations about how we can actually look at recruiting and attracting remote workers to the area. Probably before COVID, some of that was happening, and since COVID, it's really been amplified at a very high degree. One of the things that we've really also seen too that really seems to stand out even more now, that quality of place matters more than anything. Not so much quality of the workplace, but quality of where you live. And workers are really starting to understand that and appreciate that, and they want to retain the talent that they work hard to get. And I think a lot of that holds true as we think about Johnson City as a whole and the community we want to be, to also retain talent that's going to do things like raise our household income, create economic opportunities for other people, and be a multiplier in terms of job creation, spending, and ultimately help the city grow. So with that, in the conversation that we've been able to have, what we've developed is a community investment program and really looking at recruiting remote workers into this area. And the objectives that I'll quickly touch on before turning it over to Alicia Phelps with NETA. There are three main things as we outlined this program that we saw as key priorities. The first, obviously, we want to recruit remote workers. That's a big part of why we're here tonight. But two, really looking at the diversification of our economy. We are very dependent on healthcare, education, and manufacturing, and those are very important sectors to our economy. But if we don't look at ways to diversify our economy, when one of those fails, we're going to fill it. So this is a way to really enhance opportunities here and really help diversify that economy to make sure we have a stable base long term. And then lastly, one of the things I do remember, and I think, Jenny, it may have been you at the time talking about moving the needle in the positive direction on key factors, and one of those was median income. We know as individuals make more money, they tend to spend more, which ultimately helps create more jobs. Obviously, Johnson City loves sales tax. I think that's a big part of your budget and how you look at doing things like tannering knobs and other things that make this city great. And so increasing that median income gives people the opportunity to spend more and have more of an impact in our economy. So with that, as we looked at the objectives and really started to try to look at a plan, there was a big correlation that we started to see in the recruitment efforts. And Alicia Summers and I really look heavily at recruiting companies constantly, helping our existing businesses actually look at expanding here, which also means competing against other locations. So the recruitment side, it's a tough business at times. And marketing is a big part of that. But we started to see a correlation in the recruitment of people and really also the assets that we have. To move to a community, to have outdoor assets, a great quality of life, low cost of living. And it really helped spark a conversation with an expert in marketing and promotion with Alicia Phelps with NETA. And I'll let her kind of talk about her role in this, what that means from a marketing standpoint, and how everything kind of blends and works together.
Thank you, Mitch. It's a pleasure to see you all. I'm Alicia Phelps. I'm with Northeast Tennessee Tourism Association, sometimes also referred to as NETA. So yes, when Mitch first began speaking with Brenda and myself about this, we started to see a lot of correlations, a lot of similarities when it came to a visitor profile, an economic development profile, and who they were looking at recruiting. So just like COVID, it made all of us change a little bit about how we do business and how we think and how we're marketing the area. So he had mentioned this strategic planning session with you all that we were all in January, and we came together as economic development, as tourism entities, because tourism is a major player in economic development, especially here in Johnson City. So we formed this plan and this partnership with the three entities. However, there's definitely plenty of opportunity for other organizations and entities to participate with this. We just have what has come to the table today, so we're definitely looking forward to it. I'm not sure if you all have seen the pods.com article that came out yesterday noting Johnson City, Tennessee as number 2 in the country for move to. So it works out well, but if we don't do something now about it, we're not going to be number 2 for very long. They're already watching us, and if we're not doing anything, somebody's going to do something. So this plan is perfect for that. And so how does the Memorandum of Understanding work between the three entities? NETA, Northeast Tennessee Tourism, we serve as a cooperative clearinghouse for several projects throughout the region. So we would hopefully be serving as the administrative management for this. We would be tracking the stats, taking care of all the implementations on the back end, and making sure the candidates that are selected continue through the program, as well as registration. Visit Johnson City will be handling the marketing. That's what they do best, and providing assets as well. And then, of course, NetRep will be helping with the selection of the talent candidates, and they're also providing financial support as well as budgetary oversight or overview as well. And so that's how we've put together the partnership between the three, and we definitely are looking forward to hopefully promoting the area in the future. We think this could just basically build a framework for other cities, counties, governments in Northeast Tennessee as well, as we typically see when one area benefits, we all benefit.
See if I can do this without my glasses on, but, got them just in case. So, as Mitch and Alicia both alluded to, when we looked at the marketing for economic development, and we looked at who we are currently marketing to from the standpoint of NETA and the CVB, there was a lot of similarities as far as who we were getting inquiries from. So what we did was take all those inquiries and we put them into the niche markets that they were coming from. And so then we sent all that information to ETSU. They created a heat map, if you will. And so it was really amazing to us to see that where the people were getting, where we were getting inquiries from, and that there were some places that we were not doing any paid advertising at all, so it was a lot of organic. So we also looked at, okay, where do we have direct flights from? And so, of course, those were Asheville, and Knoxville. So the other part that played into that was, let's look at cost of living. What is our cost of living as compared to other cities? So then we looked at job sectors. Where were the job sectors that had the most jobs that we could really make a bigger impact in, and how many people were employed in those sectors? And what could a potential economic impact if that person moved to Johnson City? What would that mean? And then what were they currently making, and how could those dollars they were making in the larger metros go further if they came here? So that landed us to Dallas-Fort Worth. If you look at the information, while the cost of living is only 5% higher in Dallas than it is from here, I think there are a lot of assets here that they don't have in Dallas. I think you look at the employment base, that it ranges anywhere from 45,000 to almost 115,000. So there's a large job market there that's in each of those sectors, and their cost or their employment wages is much higher too. The next city was Chicago, the Windy City. Again, cost of living is 17% higher in Chicago than it is here. And again, a good base of jobs that are in there for each of those job sectors. The final city was San Francisco. This one we really labored over, San Francisco and also the San Jose area. Because it's like, okay, but there was huge numbers on our maps that showed all of the inquiries that were coming from those markets, and you see that cost of living is 119% higher in those markets. So each of those markets, when we would do the ads, they would go into a 50-mile radius, which is typically what a commute would be in the larger cities. So how would we do it? We would create an ad campaign that would be both social and static and video. So this could be what a landing page could look like. Cash into the Appalachians, get up to $55,000 when you apply and are accepted to remote work here. Fresh air is knocking. Work remote, play remote. These could also be some buttons that would be there for the perks that are would be considered and given from 10 gig internet that we have and where our ranking is, and that could potentially be free desk space. Urban thrills. So you see our location and how close we are to other mountain communities to show, that they could be anywhere in very short amount of time to experience urban thrills. So when meetings are ended, they'll go out and experience the culture. Downtown has so much to offer, and so much music, that goes on, and when the festivals are going on, there's a lot of activity and opportunities to experience our culture. So they don't have to commute in order to get something great to eat. As all of us know, there's a plethora of great local restaurants and restaurants that are here, along with the local breweries and things that are all within, somewhat of a walking distance. We're big on benefits. You can log off and take a hike. And we all know that we have beautiful mountains here to do lots of hiking. Fresh air is knocking. Enjoy thriving culture, beautiful views, and perks that you won't find anyplace else. So this final page then gives them some of the idea of the perks, but also allows them to click to fill out a form. We may get forms that say, can you send me some more information before I decide if I'm really going to apply? But let me tell you the beauty about some of this. So this was put together in partnership, but also from a remote worker that Creative Energy has. And they have recruited him. He and his family, he has 3 children, he's 30 years old, and he's moving from Minnesota to Johnson City. But a lot of this came from him, the things that really caused him to look at Johnson City as a place that he would like to move because of the outdoor assets, because of the great local restaurants, and the cost of living. Ms. Summers.
Thanks. So what's all this going to cost, right? So we looked at this as a 24-month initiative. There's a window of opportunity here with the remote workers and how it relates to COVID and the relocation. So we're anticipating that the budget for this is about $300,000. $100,000 of that is an immediate spend on the marketing campaign, $45,000 on administrative services, $100,000 for the talent incentive, $50,000 the other benefits, and I think Brenda touched on those, the co-working space and other perks, and then $5,000 for events and meetups. I will mention that we do have some commitments already. The Washington County Economic Development Council, we applied for last year a grant for $27,500 that we were not able to implement because of COVID, and the state has agreed to let us transfer those funds to this project. And then we also just today received a commitment from NetRep in the amount of $30,000 to help get this initiative off the ground. So how's it going to work? So with the program terms and conditions, we looked at eligibility, that the folks can relocate or commit to relocate to Johnson City or Washington County within 6 months of acceptance, that they are full-time remote workers. They have a minimum annual income of $50,000. They're 24 or older and eligible to work in the U.S., and they're committed to live here for at least a year. Under the terms and conditions, 1 application per household. They have to rent or buy in Johnson City or Washington County. They have to retain their employment status during the duration of the program, which is 12 months. They have to participate in networking meetings and events, and then provide feedback to the program director so we can tell when we need to tweak the program. And then the talent incentive that we talked about, it's what we're looking at is a scaled reimbursement based on their annual income. For the $50,000 to $60,000 annual income, they can expect a $2,500 reimbursement, $61,000 to $70,000, $3,500, and then $71,000 and above, the big $5,000 reimbursement. How we'll pay that out is 25% of the incentive upon their relocation to Johnson City or Washington County, another 25% after they've been here for 6 months, and then their balance at the end of the 12 months, the term of the program.
So you get a true perspective of the program, but I want to talk about how we're going to measure success, and I think that's really the important piece of all of it. You all understand metrics, you all have expectations, and we want to see good things happen to the community. So as we talk about, one of the key pieces is raising our median income. That way we know that there's a greater economic impact to help create more jobs, the multiplier effect, diversify our local economic base. Again, as we talk about being so dependent on medical, healthcare, Education, manufacturing, this is another way for us to diversify that, to keep a stable base. The creation of a new ecosystem for remote workers. Some of that exists today. There's been some conversation with Jose Castillo. I think he is one individual that has a good pulse on this, and one that we can continue to work in a partnership on to partner with Spark Plaza on a lot of things. Brand awareness, just getting the information out about our region, about Johnson City, so people know us. And what we're also doing with these remote workers is hopefully creating brand ambassadors too. People that can help tell our story as to why they actually chose to locate here. And then also really looking at a non-monetary impact. I think this is something that we tend to overlook sometimes. I'll talk about success on this next slide, but Muscle Shoals is a community that we really spent some time getting to know, understanding their program because they've been doing this since 2019. Tulsa, Bentonville, some others have been doing this, but really wanted to touch in on Muscle Shoals because before COVID, we had the opportunity to be accepted into a TVA Innovation Academy program. Muscle Shoals was also accepted. We were one of 10 communities that were part of that. So we really got to know them well, and one of the really unique things that I got from their program was it's not about the money you give away, it's about what they do within your community outside of remote working. Some individuals started Airbnbs. A lot of people got involved with nonprofits. They became big donors to some of those nonprofits and helped recruit more remote workers to the area. I think those are types of things that if we can keep our hands on, or our fingers on the pulse of that really we can say it's so much more than just a dollar figure, because those are individuals that really become part of a community and part of the fabric here. I want to talk real briefly about Muscle Shoals. They launched their program in 2019 called Remote Shoals. It's a great website, remoteshoals.com. I would encourage each of you to take a look at it. They've got an extremely creative video that really talks about all the things you can do there. And when they launched in 2019, they had a budget of $175,000. They were getting about 7 to 8 applications a month, just trying to get off the ground. COVID hit, and really the first few months of COVID really put a big impact on their program. Obviously, it stopped a lot of things from even happening. We couldn't even get out of our house. They got about 1 to 2 applications a month because there was a lot of uncertainty. But really, as you got into the summer months of and then in 2021, that's when things really started to pick up. And most recently, looking at January to date, they're getting anywhere between 100 to 125 applications a month. They've got some great publicity from a website called Flex Jobs that really helped promote their program, really put a spotlight on Muscle Shoals. To date, they've recruited 35 remote workers. They've had applications from 47 states, but probably the biggest thing that I got out of my conversation with them is they have put $0 into marketing this second year because the word is out, people are looking. They're commissioned to appropriate $250,000 to attract new workers, and once those dollars are gone, they have another $250,000 that can go right into the recruitment of remote workers to the area. They're seeing an impact, they're seeing the interest is there, and quite honestly, I mean, Muscle Shoals is a pretty unique area, but I think we've got a lot to offer as well. Honestly, quite more than Muscle Shoals has to offer. I think this is a great opportunity. I will say this, that to me, this is just the start of something. We're really looking at the marketing, promotion, and recruitment side of this. In the world of economic development, it's fun to market and recruit, but you really have to retain the base you have. And when someone locates here, they still want to be part of that community and feel the love. So we really need to look big picture too, and we are going to do that, but also ask that other partners come around the table to think about how we can make these individuals feel part of this community. How can we retain them? How can we take those young talent, the young talent attraction piece, and get them in the right spot? How can we take individuals that maybe are 50 years old to get integrated into a spot that's making them feel comfortable? I think there's a lot of things and a lot of people that we want to bring around the table, but we do know now is the time to act. I think the PODS report that Alicia mentioned is a very positive one that really couldn't have came at a better time for Johnson City. And we can act on that now and continue to build on that. And we really just appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and would like to open it up for any questions you all may have.
I'm big on return on investment, so tracking is going to be really important and keeping up with them. So I think you've got a good hold on what we were looking for. And I'm just happy that we came and told you what we really were looking for, and y'all got together and did it. So I'm really happy with the product you got so far.
Thank you.
You have questions, I do.
A couple. And the presentation is great. A lot of times we get a presentation and, I know this is at 30,000 foot. There's probably more details and whatnot. Usually we're seeing it more at 100,000, but y'all have a lot of great information. And I can tell it's been well thought out. But I was curious, the 80,000, is that a max, or is that, I mean, if somebody applies and they're 100,000, or would they be
No,
excluded?
that last category is 7,100, and, I mean, 71,000 and above.
Okay,
Anything over
okay.
there, but the 5,000 is the maximum.
And then the 1 year requirement, is that comparable to other places that have done this, or?
It is. So we looked at about 9 different areas that had successful remote worker programs, and they all had that 1 year kind of standard attached to it.
Okay. Oh, and then, that's not a really good note, but long-term impacts. What, in your all's research, what, have you, was there any information on that? I know it's kind of a new idea a few years back, but.
Well, and you can look at impact a few ways. I can give you a perspective of someone making $50,000 as a graphic designer, for instance. Overall, when you look at that $50,000, that's a $2,500 incentive that we would provide. The overall induced economic impact in terms of spending and what that means for a community would be $8,933. That's one individual. You know, we're making our money back up the minute they come through, if you really break that in over a quarter. And I think if we can look at 20 individuals that we can incentivize to come here, that probably are going to make a lot more than $50,000 a year. The impact is going to be far greater than we probably even realize. One of the things that Muscle Shoals, too, did say about the impact of the recruitment process is that some individuals, the money didn't matter. It caught their attention. But as they got to know the community, ultimately, they decided to move even if they didn't get the money, or they didn't want to wait through the process of a four-month evaluation period and just decided to go ahead and pick up from California and move. What people are looking for in terms of looking at, you know, an impact. Some people wanted 4 acres and a farm. They might be better suited for Irwin. And they might move to Irwin even without Irwin putting money into something, but it's not coming out of the budget here for the city or for NetRep or anyone else either. So I think just being open to know that, you know, we're not going to be all things for all people, but they still might choose the area based on the region as a whole. And I think a lot of this is just getting the word out. But 2, you're seeing more and more communities do this. West Virginia as a state is doing this. You know, the impact is there, the opportunity is there, and I think this is the new economy to a degree.
And then, you know, a lot of them, I guess I've seen are more in the $10,000 range. Why did you choose 5,000, or will that, if this goes through and is successful and you're able to eliminate the marketing dollars, is the idea to increase it going forward? Or
I'll just say this, I think it can definitely change. I think if this just gets our foot in the door, and if we see success from it, and we think that we can recruit more of that higher end, that 80,000 plus, I think it definitely is worthwhile revisiting to say maybe we need to put a 10,000 cap or a 15,000 cap. But I think this gets our foot in the door, and success could happen from it.
thank you.
And really, when we looked at those other 9 examples of successful programs, their cash incentive or talent incentive ranged from $2,500 to $15,000. So we landed at that 5,000 point, and to see what kind of results we could get from that. And the beauty about this whole group and the framework of this, with the input from the remote workers that come here and then participating in the networking meetings and, you know, offering up suggestions to the program directors, is that's how we figure out where we need to tweak.
And again, it's probably too early to ask, but in the application process, I'm assuming it's not just people who are moving here from a different location, but you'll also be considering people who are wanting to come back to the region or whatever?
Yes, they have to be currently employed as a remote worker, so they already have to have that remote working capability, and then moving back to the Johnson City, Washington County area. And then one other thing I might add too is, as I mentioned, we had received that grant, the Washington County Economic Development Council did, and we started implementing and using those funds already, and that was the basis for those landing pages that you saw. We've already started using those funds to get the marketing side off of this. And really, and we have talked at length about the timeline on this. There's a lifespan on being able to recruit these remote workers that are making these moves. Ideally, we'd like to get the funds to start the marketing initiative as soon as possible, and then into the next budget cycle for the balance of the funds to keep the program going.
And one last question. If they don't move into Johnson City proper, but they move into Washington County, does it pay out, or is it just in Johnson City?
It's a payout for Johnson City or Washington County.
Okay.
We are going to ask Washington County to be a partner.
Okay.
Mitch is shaking his head, yes.
He loves it.
He loved it.
I got a question. I got some questions.
He's already writing out how much he's going to donate.
Sorry.
Thank you, Mitch.
Mayor Wise, may I ask?
Yes, please.
Okay. Commissioner Hunter, you're done? All right, cool. I think it's great. You guys have been in correspondence for some time. Thank you, Alicia. Alicia, too, right?
Right, AS and AP.
Brenda, Mitch, you guys have been kind. Questions I have, and I'll just throw them out there. Have you guys been coordinating with the Johnson City Chamber of Commerce? That's a question. And then we're very gung-ho, and I just want to say this to you all and our commission. We're very gung-ho about wanting people to be a part of the good stuff that's happening here, okay? But I just want to say this. When you start recruiting people from other areas, and we don't want to touch our social issues and talk about problems we have here in the house, we're going to have bigger problems. So that's just something I want to share with a diverse perspective. When you get folks from Memphis that grew up like me, they're going to be challenged in this area to a degree. So I just think it's important that we take things in consideration when we're recruiting a lot of people from different places.
I really appreciate you saying that. Aaron, I think you're spot on. And when I think about the ecosystem that we can create, I really think this remote worker entrepreneurship almost type ecosystem is one that we all can relate to, that there's a commonality in. Where people move to a community, I think it's an opportunity to celebrate some of the things that really makes this community great that we all can envision and see success with, no matter our color, no matter our gender or anything. And I agree 100% with you. I want to make sure that anyone who moves to this community feels comfortable, feels accepted, and feels wanted. That would be my intent with the program, and I really appreciate you saying that. As it relates to the chamber, I did talk with Bob yesterday. He had reached out to me, and we were able to connect on this. Again, what I'm saying tonight is really the meat and potatoes of the marketing, that piece of it, and the recruitment. I think that's one phase of this. We have to think big picture about that ecosystem, the retention of those individuals, and making sure that they feel like they're part of this community. I think that there's going to be several partners that are going to have to come to the table. I would say that the Chamber, the JCDA, I would say Bright Ridge, I would say Spark Plaza, I would say so many others that really make this community great, and is helping trying to find that right, whether it's a mentor, whether it's group, whether it's a party, whatever it may be, that we're the connector. That's probably the biggest part of our job day to day, is being a connector, whether it's of talent, whether it's of, a real estate agent trying to help someone find a location. To me, that's our role as an economic developer. So, I would say this is a phase one approach just to get this off the ground to move now. But more importantly than anything, it's going to take a lot more than the people that you see here.
Yeah, and I just want to say I love this city. I love the people here, but recruiting from the outside, people have different perspectives than we do, and we need to take those things into consideration and create room that they can share in. And also, we have a shared culture where everybody is happy, kids are safe, good schools, nice jobs, right? So I just wanted to voice that concern on behalf of our citizens here in Johnson City. Thank you.
Okay.
Are there others?
Yes.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have 2 or 3 questions here. First, I think this process has really worked, and Mitch, thanks for laying out from the time we spent back in the administrative conference room with all of our community partners, and really getting focused around a set of strategies to help move the city forward. And you've done exactly what we asked for you to do, is to look at where you plug into the strategic plan and come back with some programs that could deliver on that strategic plan. So thank you for doing that. Just a couple questions on the budget, the 300,000 you say for, and I missed this when I first reviewed it. I thought this was for a year, or is this $300,000 a year for 2 years?
No, it's 300,000 for the 24-month
Okay.
initiative.
All right, that's
To
even.
clarify, what we would like to make an ask of tonight, if this commission would consider, is $100,000 out of this year's budget if possible.
Okay,
I don't know if that's a possibility, but, that is something that would help us ultimately move forward with the funds that have already committed with the grant funds that we've been able to apply towards marketing with the landing page, and really help us start with the marketing side of it.
okay, all right. Secondly, how did you land on the 50,000 as the floor of this program? This is certainly above our median income here in Johnson City. So how did you get to that number?
Again, as we talk about that economic impact and seeing what actually would move that needle in the right direction. As we look at the median income being in the 30,000 range here, a step up of $20,000 is a pretty significant number. And we see that as a way to create immediate impact. This was a recruitment of one person. And you continue to multiply that, getting more and more remote workers, and you see that induced impact of someone making $50,000, ultimately meaning almost $9,000 into an economic impact in a community. We saw that as kind of our baseline and said that will actually start to make a difference immediately.
And in some of the data collection that you've done, you're finding these are the kind of people who are relocating, who are moving at that income level?
Yeah. And I can tell you, like, for instance, in San Francisco, it's going to be far different than Dallas.
Sure.
Those individuals, they're probably all making over $100,000. And what that would mean from an economic impact here would be pretty substantial.
Right. So this would not apply to someone who wants to come here and start a small business? They have to be earning that money already?
Right. We're looking specifically at remote workers who are employed, that can prove they're employed, and, ultimately, it's a direct cash economic impact into the community.
And to answer your question a little deeper about how we determine those sectors, we took a deep dive, I don't want to speak for you, Brenda, in the methodology, but we.
You may want to get over the microphone so the public can hear you,
We took
Alicia.
a deep dive into the IT professional sectors and looked at what type of movement was predicted for those in terms of remote workers, whether those sectors were going to continue on remote. And then we overlaid that with the other variables in the methodology in terms of the cost of living, the economic impact, those types of things. But we did spend a lot of time figuring out which sectors were most likely to remain on remote working and those folks make a move.
I would also suggest you may want to put Brenda, the different things you were showing us that would kind of encourage them to come here for all your terminology. It was really good. You may want to put a page there about Bright Ridge and the capacity of broadband here. And that's going to be, if they're remote working, that's going to be a key thing to even know they can do that.
I think their skin in the game will help ensure that.
Right.
It was financial, IT, and the third one, accounting. Well, and to that point, I like the fact that those also complement what we have educational-wise here in Johnson City, and that ETSU has one of the best accounting programs in the state. And we've got strong financial sector, and a lot of the stuff that ETSU is doing in IT, I mean, they can move here with what they have and continue to grow in their field with educational resources that we have right here in Johnson City. And every college student is worth
40 grand.
Are there other questions for the presenters?
I don't have questions, but again, kind of to reiterate what everybody's kind of mentioned, it shows that you've taken the time, that you, one, listened to what we said about collaboration, and you've recognized your all's different strengths and how they can complement each other, and that you all are marketing gurus, business development, economic, and to recognize the changing environment of both of those, and that they're also kind of melding as y'all kind of have been working together. And so I appreciate that. You know, when we came together and created the strategic plan, you know, kind of the main focus was the brain drain. And that's not just people leaving, but, you know, people not coming here. And so it's really exciting to see that you've really incorporated everything that we've been talking about, implementing the strategic plan. I like the fact that you have actual skin in the game, with your own money being put into it. And you're paying the people, you know, so I think there's a piece of that I think people can get behind. Yeah, I really appreciate it, and I think it's a good idea for us to look into this.
I have one final question. Are all of y'all just adding another job responsibility to make this happen? How's the staffing going to occur? How's it going to work?
Take that one. I haven't been able to answer any questions yet. Yeah, as administrative, our organization, as you know, is one person, that's me, and we've been able to grow to the point where we have been looking at hiring another staff person. So we would devote, and this is going to be a big chunk of time, as we have estimated at least 10 hours a week. So you're looking at least 520 hours a year. So that staff person, this will be part of their duties as well, so they can solely be focused on that and make sure we are getting everything set up to a T, because there's going to be a lot on the back end that we're going to need to cover for sure.
So I'm guessing a lot of cities and counties are thinking along these same lines. So we're all going to be competing for the remote worker out there who's thinking about relocating. And we have to make ourselves really unique and stand out.
I do think that will be the case in a lot of communities. Some communities aren't going to be positioned to do this. You know, I think the larger cities where you're living right on top of each other, they're gonna have to get creative and think how they're going to make their communities destinations for workers too. And so this could change, and I think that's why Alicia Summers touched on this time frame of 24 months to really make an impression and get people here in this community part of it. It's going to be important, and the faster we act, the better. But yeah, when a state like West Virginia specifically gets involved and said this is going to be a statewide initiative, I think that ought to give you a perspective of kind of what to expect. And if we're going to be competitive and we're going to recruit high-quality talent here, it's going to take unique programs like this.
Are there other questions?
Mayor, I'd like to say that I am for our city growing. I think it's important that we grow at a good pace. Quick growth is not the best growth. And I know it seems like there's this rush, like we're missing out. But I just rather have the right people here in the city, rather just everybody and anybody, So I think it's important. I just don't feel there is an urgency like yesterday. Like I don't believe we should be rushed. I think we should get it right, But I do like the presentation. I'm still interested in seeing how Chamber of Commerce plays a part in this. But those are two things I want to share.
Well, and I would just say that, it's not a rush in that we're actually behind. We're behind where we need to be. This region as a whole is losing people faster than they're gaining them. In fact, the only county, I think, that has a net positive gain in population is Washington County.
And it's like less than 2%.
Which is not
really growth.
And I think the fact that this is something that you apply for, it's got so people are more than likely going to, I hope, look at our website, learn about Johnson City before they apply. I mean, that's a significant thing to consider, uprooting your family and moving them across the country or 4 hours down the road. So I mean, I think we would be looking at people that would fit well and, of course, hopefully improve and become active in the community in a positive way. I was reading an article, Tulsa, I think, is one of the first that did this, and I think in their first, whatever they call it, grouping of people, 25 of them bought houses. So they're vested in staying. They stayed long enough to realize that they loved the place and it fit well with who they were. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it. And again, like Commissioner Murphy mentioned, we're dealing with public funds, taxpayer hard-earned dollars, and so I really do appreciate the level and extent and time that y'all put into asking for money. A lot of times we get presentations that are lacking, and I can see that there's been work, it's been intentional, and I appreciate that.
Touch one thing, and I totally respect that, Commissioner Murphy, and I think you're spot on. I don't think the $5,000 is going to be a make or break on someone choosing Johnson City. I think it will capture their attention. But when people make the decision to move to a community, they're going to come visit here first. A good example was one today that Jose Castillo shared with me. 2 data scientists with a Fortune 500 company were looking at relocating between Asheville and Knoxville, and they've been kind of spending some time in communities in and around the area. They just decided they're going to rent an Airbnb for a month in Johnson City because they want to determine if they like it or not. That piece will definitely happen. But I do think the $5,000, the incentive that we can provide, the promotion that we can provide will capture attention so Johnson City at least gets recognized. At the end of the day, you chose this location with your family, just as many of us have. I grew right outside Charlotte, and for me, this is home now. Even though I was born somewhere else, but I still had that same decision to make 11 years ago, and I think people will be very aware with that decision that they make. And I just want to make sure that we promote the city in the best light.
Mayor, can I say one thing?
Yeah, and then I'm going to say something eventually.
We're talking about Tulsa, and I moved here from Tulsa 28 years ago to make this home. So I know about Tulsa, and it was a great place, but this is home. So I don't think we need to sell it once they get here. I think people will realize it. But we got to get people here. So I appreciate what you've been doing. So sorry.
I appreciate y'all putting this together. The thing that I have felt very strongly since the beginning of my public service is that we have so many important partners engaged in this effort, and so often they're functioning in isolation one from the other. And yet what we're asking each of them to do layers neatly on top of each other's respective objectives. So to recruit a visitor is really the precursor to recruiting a remote worker. A remote worker may be the precursor to their employer discovering, why did our number one data scientist decide to move to where? And then all of a sudden they begin to look, and who knows, maybe all of a sudden Alicia's coming and telling us about a company with 200 data scientists who decided they could all work from here. We're already making a significant investment of work and wealth and wisdom as a community in trying to recruit and retain visitors and industry and opportunity to our community. That's already happening. The question is to what degree we look at it and say, well, you know what, Bright Ridge has a thing that leverages nicely with what the CVB was trying to do and comes together in a way that makes sense with the broader mission of the economic development initiatives like NetRep. And it is in those programs coming together that you're going to have that multiplying effect. And that's what we need. If you look back on our history as a community, Johnson City has overcome limitations and challenges over 150 years, and it's almost always been when people stopped thinking of their individual silos and their own selfish interests and began to look at how they all begin to row in one direction. And Johnson City needs all of its stakeholders rowing in one direction. We need to be running like somebody's chasing us, because if we aren't, other people are passing us. And we just can't, for our kids and grandkids, can't afford to let that happen. And so you all had me at, we've been talking together I was pretty impressed with that. And then as the plan unfolded, I think you have something here that has significant potential, and I hope other partners will look at this as a model going forward. Don't start with the number you want, start with the vision you have, and then tell us what that's going to cost. And I thank you for doing it. Is there, what is the next step on this, Mr. Peterson, at this point? Is it?
To fund or not to fund?
The request is for $100,000 immediately to start the marketing. If I could, you all just said you had $50,000. So is this a $100,000 marketing campaign, which takes the ask of us down to 50 to make up the 100? Or do you want 100 so you've got 150 to do marketing with? And I would like to know, excuse me for questioning here, what exactly is the marketing campaign? Is that $100,000 to pay an ad agency? Are you buying billboards? You buying social media buys? How much of that 150 is going to be for admin? And a little detail on how that 150 will be expended.
I'll be the bad guy. Yeah, we want $100,000 today. if
Okay,
that's
well,
possible.
I knew that was the answer I had asked.
I'll let Brenda talk about what it's going to be used for.
Okay.
Pete, the $100,000 would be used for buying placement in those markets. And as you can imagine, placement in markets that have that kind of population is very expensive. So the money would be used for that, as well as creating maybe a 60-second that could potentially look at, okay, how could we do something on cable? How could we do something, TV-wise or streaming? And then we would look at a 30-second spot that could be tied to an ad campaign that was both primarily on Instagram. There will be some Facebook, but a lot of that, because that's the profile of the people that we're trying to recruit. So that's the breakdown. And so if the ad buy itself was, I'm going to throw out a number, say if it was $90,000 or $75,000 for placement, then the agency, which is typical in agencies, they charge a 10% commission.
And I'm assuming that you actually probably are getting a lot of savings because of the investment we've made in the branding that would be used.
I think that's the other part of the whole story, Commissioner Hunter, is that this helps to build Johnson City's brand. We have done that through all of our efforts with our advertising, our website, and everything. And I think this helps us to tell that brand story out in other areas that we currently are not marketing to. And I think that quality of life and what they're going to see when they go to the website, when they go to the landing page, that is what's going to pique their interest.
And to Mr. Peterson's question, and you may not know this off the top of your head, but I know a couple of years ago when I first got on, I was like, we should kind of develop the tourism to, hey, come play and maybe stay or whatever.
Yeah, right.
And, I know y'all have done some testing of that kind of stuff. Can you speak to that?
We have, and it's been, very interesting. And I use, again, the Bright Ridge campaign for the, Live Retire, that, we're in the second phase of that campaign right now. And probably we have already responded to well over 200 inquiries for people who want additional information to come here to live. But part of that also is they want vacation guides, or they're looking on the website to start to book rooms so they can plan to come, to visit here. So I think, conversion is happening. Sometimes that data's a little harder to get, but we know that it's happening. Just like when they come here for a sporting event and they see the beauty and the people. The people are the difference here, absolutely the difference.
And I like about this that there is a way to track, because
Yes.
you apply and we know who you are and we know where you're going.
Yeah.
And so it's
And that's
quantifiable.
absolutely, and that's the thing with the ad placements, is that the tracking will be available and we'll know immediately. So if such and such market is not performing the way we think it should, then we can stop immediately and look at something else.
Let me address something that Vice Mayor brought up, which I totally agree with. First of all, what's the total number of
Applicant.
the applicants that we would take?
So what we've created in our budget with that scaled reimbursement is roughly, we're going to target 30, and that's in that entire $300,000 budget. Now, Mitch mentioned, I've mentioned that we, this is just the framework. We will be looking for other partners. But what other communities have done is once their budget runs out for the talent incentive, they just close the application period until it's refunded.
Right.
But we're targeting 30, not knowing with any degree of certainty whether they'll be at that $2,500 level, the $35,000 or the $5,000 level.
So the return on investment for one person coming here, moving here at a $50,000 salary, what's that, Mitch?
So the economic impact is $8,933.
Okay.
And that's looked at from an actual dollar, standpoint. That individual, as Pete talked about, one student's worth $40,000 over their term. That's what one individual making $50,000 is worth. So if it's a $2,500 incentive and you're giving roughly a $9,000 economic impact, you're making money up.
So just for the marketing piece, we would, if we got 10, although we have to provide the incentives, but about 10 people would basically pay that back.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And, this is a 24-month period. My hope is that when we're given an update a year from now, that we can say, we're not going to put any money into marketing because we're getting 100 applications a month, if not more. That would be my hope. And I think, again, and I'm going to go back to Commissioner Murphy, what we're looking at from the selection standpoint, too, obviously, we would look to try to manage that. But one of the things that Muscle Shoals did that I really appreciate, and I think that, it's something we're going to implement as well, is having individuals that are either a commissioner, individuals that are on nonprofits, having an actual selection committee that's beyond just the 4 people you see. So that way, you really have a good evaluation process.
Thank you.
So in finish of your answer to your question, I think the request before you is to fund the proposal in the amount of $100,000 this year. We have 2 tourism agencies involved in this. So there is without doubt an element of bolstering the lagging and sagging tourism element of our local economy, which could qualify for some federal funding coming our way. So I would,
Is there a way you would describe the funding at this stage to preserve that option?
I would suggest that should someone choose to make a motion to fund this, that it would be worded to make a motion to fund in the amount of however many dollars you choose to the, Brenda, I'm sorry, the CVB and NETA to promote.
Okay, he's new here.
No, that's a sign of an old dog that doesn't learn new things. That's me, not you, Brenda. To fund NETA and the CVB for the purposes of promoting tourism and relocation of individuals to Johnson City and Washington County. And if those funding sources become available, obviously we have that money. And if not, with the financial position that I feel pretty certain we're going to end up in, finding $100,000 to fund this is doable in the current climate, in the current fiscal year.
Where will this money sit? Who will be responsible, the fiscal agent over it?
It'll sit with NETA, and I will say this, and Mr. Peterson and I and others had just more detailed conversation about impact in terms of where people decide to lay their roots and live. I really have appreciated the past 11 years getting to work with this commission because you always take a role of leadership. And you typically are, and this is not a knock on any community, but you're typically the first to act in a lot of things, and I really appreciate that. My hope would be is that with this action today, and really working with NETA, who has been doing regional tourism since 1970s? I knew it was in the 70s. I didn't know the exact year. I hope that opens up the door to consider talking with other communities too, as we see success here, so that we all can benefit as a region. And quite honestly, for someone who's been dealing with regionalism for the past 3 years, I think this is a good step in the right direction.
Would this need to be classified into a restricted fund or some sort of MOU that would be developed?
Well, I was just say, if you all approve this, what we would like to do would be to develop an agreement that would have specific terms and conditions and distribution of fund timelines and deliverables back to you as far as reporting and those types of things. And give the mayor authorization to sign that once it's completed, if you all decide to move forward with this evening.
So what is the commission's preference? Is there a motion? Can anybody re-say exactly what he said?
I can say, I make a motion of what Mr. Peterson said about this.
Described in the way, yes.
I want to see that pained face on that.
Can you put that in words for us?
She loves
Maybe.
those
Being
motions.
recorded, so I have it.
So we have a motion to approve
Funds
the
to be
funds
available.
in a way consistent with Mr. Peterson's description. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
Is that, so it's $100,000 over 2 years, essentially? Is that correct?
We're asking $100,000 out of this fiscal year budget. That you're
It's just
currently
for
in.
1 year?
And we've already had a letter and request come in to Pete and regarding next fiscal year as well. And we're happy to come back. Maybe there's an opportunity for us as we look and go into next fiscal year to give you an update on activity too, where we're at.
Is it possible to put in this motion that you come back in 6 months and give a report?
I think they're quarterly
Are they quarterly?
updates already.
Okay, that's
built
even
in.
better. Okay.
Well, I do need this for clarification. So $100,000 in this fiscal year, the new fiscal year starts in July 1. You're going to come back and request 200,000, and so you've got the full 300,000, or you're going to come back and request 300,000?
Said it correctly the first
Okay.
time. We're asking for $100,000 out of this fiscal year with additional money being applied to next fiscal year as part of the budget.
Come out of our new budget.
My hope would be, and I would say this is all of our hope, that more partners are able to come to the table and the efforts that we have are amplified. Again, he's in the audience. Mitch will hear this
There he is.
presentation.
Well, he already
Lucky
said it's
night.
okay.
You lucked out
He
tonight.
gave the thumbs up.
Yeah.
All right.
Jeff Dykes.
He's been holding up his auction card back there.
We've had conversations with Bright Ridge, and I think there's several others that this makes a lot of sense for.
In conversations with Mitch and other potential contributors to this, I think this is going to be an effort that you're going to see more funding sources than just the city and the grant and NetRep at this point.
It will be broader than the city, no doubt.
I mean, the goal here is that you run out of money between now and July the 1st because the program's really successful.
But in unsolicited, we had an employer reach out to us today to ask about how they can be involved. And I hope that means from a monetary standpoint. But I do think there'll be some interest from more than just governments in this.
So since the incentive piece is not being requested in the funding right now, and you all of a sudden you have 5 candidates who are excellent, and you want to go ahead and start, will you have the money?
I don't think we're going to, between now and the end of June, we won't have someone that's going to be ready to move and be part of this program.
And they would only get 25% of it to start with anyway, correct? So,
Yep, and that is the beauty, that it's paid out over the duration of a year, so we make sure that that individual is going to be here for a full year.
Are there any other questions? Is there objection to calling the roll? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fowler?
Yes.
And Mayor Wise?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The headline story tomorrow.
Well, there it is.
If I could ask Chief Turner and Anthony to come forward, please. Your next order of business deals with a presentation on surveillance in the downtown area. This has been a topic that we've talked about off and on through the years and specifically in recent months. And I had tasked them with doing some research on how we could monitor the downtown area and to look specifically at calls for service in the downtown area. So, Anthony, if you would, please.
Well, we're glad to be here and discuss. Sometimes there's opportunities with growth, and this is one of those cases. So the downtown area has been growing in the last 20 years, really the last 30 years, tremendously. And so as we've seen that growth, and just a few slides here showing how it's changed over time. We've gotten Founders Park's been built, we've had King Commons, but the amount of development downtown has been tremendous. And I remember when I came to work here, there wasn't much going on downtown. And now it's a vibrant place, lots of stuff going on all the time. And so we see that every day. Just an example, if you go out on Rome Street, you see on Main Street, you see all kinds of innovations, renovations. And this is in 2012, and there was already a lot going on at that time compared to what it had been. And you move to 2018, there's more and more development. We've all seen it. And we get calls just about all the time with somebody doing a new renovation of a building downtown. So there's a lot going on. We all know that. We've seen it. The reconstruction that we've done in public works and also the private sector has made a lot of difference. So you see this in 2012 moving to what it looks like more today. It's a nicer looking, inviting space, and people are there. So with people, there's always going to be things that happen. And so the more people you get there, the more challenges you have. And that sometimes is a good challenge, and sometimes there are things that we have to address. I'm going to let the chief talk a little bit about the crime.
We've included just a few slides on crime in the downtown area. And as a comparison, we kind of looked around Roan Street, the mall in that area for comparable businesses. This will be a heat map of the downtown area, the greater downtown area, which goes over to West Watauga Avenue and Walnut Street, where on the bottom where the Walnut Street construction is here. And then, of course, we got Main and Market, so that's our heat map from where incidents occur in the downtown. We looked at some of the offenses that we thought we could affect through the use of cameras. Some of the offenses that occur in downtown that are most prevalent are your assaults and theft crimes. There's a diverse population that either visits downtown or works downtown. Also, a lot of our homeless population seeks services in downtown, and lots of times they're the victims of thefts. They don't have ways to secure their property from where they're staying, so lots of times they are victimized as well. But if you look at some of those crimes in the downtown area, and I'm sorry, this is the mall area. I wasn't able to produce a slide with the same numbers on it for the mall, but I do have them. The simple assaults are very similar around that North Roan Street area as what they are in the downtown. The aggravated assaults are a little bit higher in the downtown area, and the thefts are pretty comparable. There's no there's no glaring differences between what we have in the downtown and what's occurring.
So the Red Lobster is really the epicenter of crime, is that?
What's the hot spot
What's the
there?
hot spot?
The mall would be right here.
Oh, okay, that's the interstate on that
What's over
side.
there to your right?
Castle Hills, isn't it?
No,
Yeah, that's John's old
that's gonna go
house.
down now.
Yeah.
Is that the Gump? I mean,
You know, a lot of the crimes in this area are related to traffic. There's a lot of vehicles in and out around the mall, probably more so than downtown. So a lot of those will be crimes involving thefts from vehicles or different thefts as far as shoplifting businesses in the mall area.
So the area that was chosen to look at this point in time is the downtown area and the areas of the highest activity. You start looking at Main Street, there's a whole lot going on Main Street, especially after dark. And you look at other places like Tipton and Spring Street. So all this ties together. And then you look at some of the places where do they go? They park in places like the downtown square. So you see a lot of activity as they go from these other streets and these businesses to areas like the downtown square lot, and then of course across to the Cherry Street lot. So as you start tying all these things together, you look at the breezeway that has been built, so it's heavily traveled, and then you've got the crosswalk there on State of Franklin that goes across at Spring Street. So as you look at these areas, then here are the areas that have been chosen by the police department to monitor. If you can see the shaded blue areas, you got Main Street, you got Spring Street, you've got the Tipton Street lot on over to the downtown square lot, and you've got this section of State of Franklin all the way in between the Cherry Street lot and the downtown square lot. So you have all these areas that you want to monitor, and so what we have to do is find a way to do that with some cameras. So the areas of focus are these Main Street, Tipton Street lot over to the Cherry Street lot, all these areas. You start putting in cameras to cover these areas, and so you look at the end of the breezeway on each end, and those would be, if you did an initial plan and you did nothing else, you would probably do the areas where these green cameras are. And that's not just one camera at each of these locations, because you want to look in multiple directions. So some of these are called multi-sensor cameras, so they would look, some of them 180 degrees, some of them 270, and some of them 360 degrees. So at the end of the breezeway, you're looking in a lot of different directions. You're looking up and down in Main Street. You look at the end of the walkway there at Tipton Street, and you want to look back up and down Spring Street, down toward Tipton Street, down toward the Tipton Street lot. And then as people congregate sometimes out in parking lots is where a lot of the activity happens that you want to monitor. So you have cameras in the downtown square lot and the Cherry Street lot. The two areas that are in blue in the downtown square lot would be if you wanted to do license plate recognition as they are leaving the parking lot. If something has happened and you want to recognize who the person is. If you wanted to add that blue camera at the other end of the Cherry Street lot, you could get some more coverage in that area, but that is not part of this project. Well, this is a warped view, and I apologize for that. It's a panoramic view, and the street obviously is not bent like that. So if you can imagine looking to the left side of the image, that's the breezeway, and then looking up and down Main Street, looking all the way back down toward Buffalo Street and then back up toward Rome Street. And there are some things out there that present a little bit of a challenge in visibility with some of the street furniture and some of the trees. If you look at the end of the walkway that goes down to Spring Street, you would be able to see pretty much all the way up and down Spring Street on the left and on the right, and then all across, and you can see a lot of what's going on Tipton Street and then all the way over to the Tipton Street lot. Obviously, you lose some resolution the farther away you get. And if you're in the downtown square lot, you have the ability to see a lot of the activity going on. This is not excessively high. You could probably go even higher and see more of what's going on. But by strategically placing cameras in this lot, this happens to be at the corner, we would probably more than likely have at least one at the end of the breezeway, which would give you more advantage to the left and right, more centered on the parking lot. And this would be a good view right here where you could see the license plate of a vehicle leaving the parking lot. In the Cherry Street lot, you would be able to see a good deal of the activity. Most of the activity tends to be on the western end of the parking lot at the moment. As things might grow in the future, you could always add one on the eastern end of the parking lot. So how much does it cost? Well, the base cost of 16 cameras is going to be $40,803. That is for the cameras themselves. These cameras are a variety of different types. Some are very high-powered cameras, and some are more of a lower resolution, but none of them are low resolution, starting at 1080 and going much higher than that. Some of them up as high as 8K and even 16K. The $9,290 is for the two very high-resolution cameras that aim in on the exits of the parking lot at the downtown square to allow you to see what vehicles have left there that you might be looking for if you've seen activity in the parking lot. This company that has put the proposal together has offered to install the cameras for $8,450. And that is the installation plus setting it up with our existing software so that they can be recorded and so they can be monitored. Our cost for our installation would be, just for the materials, would be $14,645. That gets us the fiber, the power, and the conduit, and again, that's us installing that. So the total for all of those items is $73,188.65. I'm going to give it back to the chief for answering questions.
You know, we've been very fortunate to be able to work with the traffic division and their cameras that they have throughout the city. And a lot of those cameras have helped us as far as everyday things that we deal with, traffic crashes at some intersections where both parties state that they have the green light. The physical evidence is very difficult to tell who had the right of way and who was at fault. And so we've been able to go back and view footage from those traffic cameras that are already in place and determine who was at fault in a lot of those crashes. Also, we've used those cameras on some crimes, and I'll just go over this briefly. These are some of the larger things that have happened. We had a backhoe that was stolen up on Browns Mill Road. The vehicle that took the backhoe had actually wrecked on Knob Creek Road and left the backhoe behind, but we utilized those traffic cameras. We were able to identify the truck and the trailer that was used to steal the backhoe. It led us to a suspect who owned a vehicle that matched that description, and we were able to place charges against him. You may remember there was a food truck that was stolen from downtown. I think a Suburban had hooked up to that food truck and had taken it. They left on I-26 eastbound, so it kind of gave us a direction to head toward. We were able to actually find the food truck in Mars Hill and make an arrest on that. So it pointed us in the right direction. It didn't give us a license tag or a suspect. We had to do some legwork on that, but it did point us in the right direction. And during the construction there at the General Mills site, an excavator was stolen. The traffic cameras, we reviewed that footage, and it showed a dump truck hauling it on the interstate. Again, it led us toward Banner Elk, North Carolina. So we did some work up there and worked with authorities in North Carolina, interviewed an employee and a suspect, and actually made an arrest and recovered that piece of equipment as well. So not only do we use it every day as far as crashes, but also on some crimes that involve, major amounts as far as thefts. God forbid if there's a shooting in one of those parking lots, a lot of your witnesses would leave the area before the police arrived. If we had license plates, we can identify people who were there and not only identify suspects, but also witnesses who may be on the scene as well. So that's just some of the uses that we've had in the past from the cameras we already have.
Chief, I don't recall on your slide if one of the crimes that you talked about was vandalism.
Yes, ma'am.
And I think one of the things that I've been very concerned about are our new parks downtown and
Yes,
just
ma'am.
the vandalism that could occur, our bathrooms, that we have the public bathrooms and everything downtown as well. Was there any consideration to, put a camera toward Founders Park and King Commons, these new areas where we've made considerable, investments and vandalism does occur in those areas?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sure we could add cameras where needed. Those restrooms have been vandalized a number of times, and we actually have some officers working throughout the day to try to identify people who are committing those vandalisms. So when we're using personnel instead of a camera there right now in that particular instance with the new bathrooms there at King Commons.
They've already been vandalized.
Oh,
Yes,
8 or
ma'am.
10 times.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Several times.
And the logic behind the human resource versus the camera, these cameras aren't going to stop anything. The only thing the cameras are going to do will be to potentially allow us to identify who did it after the fact. And I think I'm safe in saying the bathroom's been vandalized at least 8 times. They got them every day the first week it was open.
Do you, from other cities' experiences, do you find over time, as people know that there are security cameras around, that it acts as a deterrent?
It does have deterrent value. I don't know, as far as I'm not asked that specific question at police departments in other cities, but certainly it does have deterrent value. Mr. Peterson and I were talking today, and we were talking about lighting, what the deterrent value is for lighting, what the deterrent value is for cameras. A lot of it depends on the crime that someone's going to commit. If I'm going to commit a burglary or break in a car, lighting would certainly be a deterrent. As far as the cameras, it may deter other crimes. People may not be involved in assaults, things like that, where they could be identified. If it's happening out in public view, it wouldn't be a deterrent value, not so much inside businesses in the downtown, but certainly out in public view and public areas.
Do our neighboring cities have security systems like what we're talking about?
Again, I've not really talked to Kingsport or Bristol about what they have, but I'm sure that they do have. And Anthony may be able to answer that as far as the traffic cameras, but.
As the Chief mentioned, this is a presentation on cameras. We're also working on a study about enhanced pedestrian lighting downtown. As far as the human being's perception of feeling safe or unsafe, bright illumination gives a feeling of safety to human beings at an exponential rate in comparison to almost anything else. So we're not asking for any action tonight. We just wanted to make this presentation because it was ready. And as soon as we get a pedestrian level lighting plan put together, we want to come back and make that presentation so that you've got some options to think through and perhaps use a mixture of the two or one over the other, but just to address comfort level, crime, inappropriate activities in different areas of town, is trying to find some solutions for that.
We would certainly like to deter those incidents before they happen, but at the same time, when they do happen, we would like to identify people who commit those crimes and try to arrest them and if we can.
Did y'all look, or I'm assuming it's concentrated and, a lot of that, you can determine on your own as to what's around there. But as Commissioner Brock mentioned, kind of that playground area, the library, John Sevier, parking garage, are those areas that weren't assessed, or, with the data that has to be pulled, did it become cost prohibitive and you were looking at just the main areas of issue? Or how did that?
Yeah, yes, I think to cover, those additional areas that you spoke about, it would certainly take more cameras and increase the cost. We looked at the areas of Main and Market, which are probably most traveled, and a lot of the people who come to downtown after dark to go to restaurants or nightclubs, those will be concentrated on those streets and also in the parking lots there. So we could certainly expand upon that, but, it would be additional cost and additional cameras.
Thank you.
Anyone down this way with a question? Any other questions? Is the primary intent, so there would be a discouraging effect. It seems to me like the value of it is the cameras to be able to tell who has registrations on all these cars that left in the 10 minutes before you get there and really figure out what might have happened. I don't know that
Yes, ma'am.
how much of a shadowy figure in the dark that's backlit by street lights and may have vandalized a restroom. How much are you able to identify an individual person? A license plate's pretty easy to read.
A lot of the value comes in even identifying vehicles. Eyewitness accounts is probably least reliable. It was a red Ford when in reality it was a red Chevrolet. So we have a lot of bolos that we put out based on footage we receive at Walmart or other businesses who have cameras where we're able to identify vehicles, and then we start, that gives us a place to start, and we can work from there as far as, specific things on that vehicle may stand out. It may be missing the hubcap on one side or so on and so forth. It gives us a place to start, and sometimes the images, they're not very clear, but we're still able to identify people based on images of an individual as well.
There are no
Thank you,
other
Chief. No,
questions.
appreciate
Thank you, Anthony and
Chief.
Chief Bowe.
Appreciate you.
I think we have one last item under other, Mr. Peterson.
Yes, sir. Your next order of business is consideration and discussion of the replacement of the artificial surface at Kermit Tipton Stadium. Earlier this afternoon, in a discussion with the school board, we got into pretty lengthy details about the need to replace the artificial surface at the stadium. Stadium opened for use in August of 2010, so it has been through 11 playing seasons. Lifespan of that particular material is 10 to 12 years, so it is without doubt the end of its usable service life. The question, there isn't a question about whether or not it needs to be replaced. It does. The question is the funding source to replace it. To review what we talked about earlier today, CHA Sports designed the stadium and oversaw the construction. We have relied on them to resurface the track, for example, in the past, and to make repairs to the artificial surface when they were needed, and they've done some other park design for us. That particular firm works for communities our size all the way to, they have done work for USC, UCLA, Notre Dame, Georgia, Auburn. I mean, they do work at all different levels of professional to recreational. It's a very reliable firm. We have already contracted with them to develop the specifications for the turf replacement. They have a bid document ready to go, which we have down at purchasing. We can move extremely quickly to get the replacement process started. The ideal window is that period of time between when school ends and before football season starts. So you basically have the months of June and July to get this done. Labor will be at a premium over the summer season. These projects get booked pretty quickly, and the availability of different crews to do the install becomes pretty sparse the later in the summer you go. So the sooner we can get this scheduled and get it started, the better off we're going to be, and the better our chances are of having it completed successfully prior to the start of the fall season. So that's a recap of the project. Your funding sources, you could go to donors and go through a fundraising process, which will be a lengthy process. There is the availability of funds from the PEP account. There would also be, you could make a budget amendment and pay for it out of general fund dollars. This will be a $500,000 project, give or take probably 15%. So, and that would be removal and disposal of what's there, replacement of the synthetic surface, putting new ballast into it, and having it with all the appropriate striping and logos and everything would be on the field. The PEP definitely has the capacity to fund this project. There was some discussion earlier today about the hopes that the PEP would have the ability to fund a new town acres more quickly now that there are some federal dollars available to do some other things with that need to be done with school facilities. In review of the revenues coming into the PEP, it's going to be 6 years or so at the earliest before there will be enough positive cash flow running through PEP to issue the $30 million plus it's going to take to build a new town acre school. So the use of $500,000 today to replace the playing surface at the stadium, I don't feel like is going to impact the timing of when you could start a new town acre school. There's some existing PEP debt that's already on the books that's going to have to roll off in combination with accumulation of PEP revenues for a period of 5, 6, 7 years before you're going to be in a position to issue the debt to build a town acre school. So those would be your funding sources and the availability.
I would move that we use PEP money to do this and do it as soon as possible from a medical perspective because of the risk of injury on the field. And
I second that motion.
I would point out, Charlie has worked closely with CHA on if you've got any technical questions about the product or the project, and Bob has worked closely with PEP account, but did I say anything that was off base at all?
no, and I've been around since they were doing this, and it was a lot more expensive to put it down the first time than it is to replace it the second time. So
Just from a procedural standpoint, we would bond the money, and then the PEP.
PEP funds
would pay the
can
debt
only be
service.
used to pay debt service.
Correct.
and we
For
could get a
the
loan.
amount of money that we're talking about here, I would want to consult with our FA, but I'm thinking a 90-day note, a 2-year note at the max. You don't want to finance this for a long time. And if we
Put it
go
on
with a
your credit
real
card, get the
short-term note,
miles.
we're probably looking % to 1.25%. I mean, there's not going to be much of
Good
a.
time to borrow the money right now.
Weren't we
Yes.
considering some other stuff, though, if we bundled it together?
It was mentioned today, the need to work on the track. No disrespect, Commissioner, but that's going to be a 6-digit project. That's not going to be $25,000 we resurfaced the track the same time we built the stadium. And don't hold me to this, but I think it was $250,000, $300,000 to resurface the track. And Charlie, has Ed been in and given us a report on the track in the last year?
Only that it needs to be replaced, yeah. I mean, it's
Okay.
it's a formal report, but it needs to be replaced.
Okay. So replacing the track is a lot less time sensitive than the turf. Those are two completely separate projects, and there would be no economy of scale of trying to do them together because you have two different products with two different contractors that would be involved in the project. I mean, I'd be glad we can follow up with Ed. He should be able to give us a pretty close ballpark number within a week or so as to what it would take to replace the track surface. Be glad to do
So is
that.
that 500,000 all-inclusive, that would be
Give or
signed,
take
sealed,
15%.
delivered?
Give or take 15%.
That's the logos, the striping, removing what's there, leveling up the rock subsurface that's under it, and replacing the new rug, new ballast, and it would be ready to play on. Yes, ma'am.
We have a motion and a second, but we have not voted. Is there any objection to us proceeding with the roll call? Ms. Jennings?
Commissioner Brock?
Yes.
Commissioner Hunter?
Yes.
Commissioner Murphy?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Fowler?
Yes.
And Mayor Wise?
Yes, ma'am.
At this time, we're at that point in the agenda for public input.
We'll open the floor to anyone. Oh, hey, there we go.
You found it.
We'll open our public input. Anyone wishing to address the commission can approach the podium. Charlie, Bob, anything, random thoughts you want to share?
Mitch may have a check back there he's bringing us.
Just to let you know, it related to the cameras, James Ellis has been studying cameras in the park system for years, so some of the areas, downtown, like Pete just mentioned about the bathroom vandalism, we've had vandalism at Carnegie Park within the past week. We have hit and runs at Civitan Park, and we're obviously worried about any new areas such as a splash pad that hasn't opened yet. So, wherever in the park system, we're worried about vandalism. So cameras is something we're probably going to talk with Anthony about some, see what, if you can even maximize that subject to funding too. So we are studying that.
Thank you. Public input, anyone else? And if not, we'll close our public input opportunity. Mr. Peterson.
Next on your agenda is the manager's report. And out of respect for your time, I will field questions from the commission or take directive.
Which commissioner is your favorite?
It's a John Hunter
Janet.
question. One of our commissioners, the mayor, was asked that question at a Rotary event.
By another commissioner who's young and immature in his comments.
Okay. Checking the other one over here.
I was looking at the culpable party. I have no questions. We've spent a lot of time together this past week
Been a long
in Nashville, a good visit with our legislative delegation. Again, pleased to see the governor's budget. Of course, that doesn't mean anything is done. It still has to pass the House and the Senate, but it's a positive first step in what we hope will be a successful transformation of an important building on the Walnut Street corridor. So that's positive. Are there other questions? Sorry.
Just one question. I know, Mayor, you brought up several weeks ago about us meeting with the Regional Diversity and Inclusion Alliances. Is there an update on that or a meeting